Test.
Test.
So many tests.
Test. Okay.
I'll put some.
Where's the camera? Oh, so I should be like. Go.
Be careful with the mic and those speakers up there.
Oh,
Maybe
these?
step
So maybe
back.
step back.
Oh, step back.
Step further away.
Okay. Start. Hi. Thank you for joining us at the Fun is Still Transgressive Fist Day at Dust, New York. I want to thank Daniel Leva for inviting me to start off this event. I'm Michael Bullock, and I'm reading a passage from my story, The Godfathers, accompanied by music by Daniel, Word of Command. This piece was published as a first in a series of transgressive erotic fiction named Heaven Tonight, created and edited by Michaela Durand and published by Broadcast Pioneer Works online journal. For Heaven Tonight, Durand invites artists and writers to offer their own perspective on pleasure, shame, lust, loathing, and all things sex-driven. My story is a tale about a couple on the brink of marriage that are about to get engaged at Anita Baker's farewell concert. They encounter an inexperienced but very eager 33-year-old virgin. I'm starting at the moment the virgin named Sev enters our apartment. The Godfathers. Let's daddy him and break this cycle of reckless de-virginizers who abandon us. I preached like I was running for office. It was kind of true. I had a mission. I really was going to change things. How old were you again? Paul asked. We knew each other's virginity stories. but it was time to revisit these ghosts. 15, I remember thinking that muscular 28-year-old was so old. That gym should have installed a plaque in your honor, commemorating your residency as the locker room Lolito. Paul laughed. With that little teenage wrestler body, you must have made those closeted dads lose their minds. I did, eventually, but it took some time. After that first guy dropped me, I was heartbroken. How did it start with him? I baited him. All my friends were bragging about sex, and I wanted it too. I timed my workouts so we would finish together, and then I'd linger outside the steam room door. I did that every day until I finally got his attention. That fucker never even kissed me. He just bent me over, pressed my face against the foggy glass door, and told me to keep watch. No warm-up, nothing. One brutal stab, and I had a real cock in me for the first time. I froze, but I was proud. I was getting rewarded like all the prettiest cheerleaders. Didn't it hurt, Paul asked. It wasn't the first thing that I had in my ass. I'd been practicing with a miniature Red Sox baseball bat my dad gave to me. Paul laughed. That's so fucked up. Your dad gave you your first dildo? You never told me that. I guess I never told anyone. Anyway, that guy's dick was thicker, and he fucked fast. He came like in 5 minutes. So hot. My little closeted jock taking a stranger's load at the gym, Paul laughed. He seemed a little aroused. Paul knew all about my straight passing jock days as a teen who despised flamboyant signs of homosexuality. Those days I got good at hiding what I really wanted. I was so naive then. I thought that having sex would make us boyfriends. After he fucked me, he grabbed my face and looked me in the eyes and screamed, "Never, ever do that again without a condom." "Geez," Paul commented. That dick forever linked your first sexual experience with shame, fear, disease, and death. I sat alone in that steam room, terrified, with his cum dripping out of me. He never spoke to me after that. Of course he didn't speak to you after that. He had just fucked a minor. Yours was traumatic too, right? Horrifying, Paul shook his head. I was 18, thrilled to be at my first house party in New York City. This handsome, jacked man in his mid-30s came up to me. I couldn't even talk, I was so drunk. All I remember were his baby blue diesel corduroys. He was the coolest guy that had ever talked to me. Didn't he rape you? He fucked me after I blacked out, and I only realized in the morning because of how crazy my ass felt. He didn't know it was the first time. I left before he woke up. I thought he was a monster. That's why you became a strict top. I was trying to lighten the mood. That was when, 2001? Not to excuse what he did to you, but back then, most gay men still lived in so much shame. Yeah, they couldn't help us. AIDS ruined everything for their generation. They weren't proud of bringing new kids into the scene. Paul said. I nodded. We made our peace with the things that we'd learned the hard way. By the way, I discovered him, so I'm taking his virginity. I was going to stand my ground. You're stupid, Paul said dryly. I opened the door to a wide, smiling Sev. He was standing as tall as he could. He was smaller and more adorable than I remembered. I introduced Paul to Sev and watched as they formally shook hands like it was the start of a business meeting. You're even sexier in person, Sev said to Paul with a smirk. So you're from Cape Town, Paul asked innocently. Yes, sir. Here for work. Drink? Paul asked, opening a beer and handing it to Sev. I got really drunk last night. In Africa, I hardly ever drink. New York's life is insane. Friday night, I was so naughty. I got home at 1 a.m. He continued this small talk as he drowned his beer in one gulp. Paul rolled his eyes at me in secret. I knew what he was thinking. We had a real nerd on our hands. While I got off on the idea of being a gay sex doula, hand-holding someone through their first sexual journey, Paul didn't. For Paul, thirds were strictly entertainment, for sport and variety, never emotional bonding. That was for him and I only. He preferred our thirds to be grown and sexy, as he liked to put it. He didn't want a mess to clean up. Can I ask a question, Sev said. How long have you been together? 16 years, we answered, almost perfectly in unison. You're married? No way, Paul interjected. What's the point of that? To be validated and controlled by a capitalist heterosexual society? Why would we ever assimilate to that misery? Paul squeezed Sev's ass. Does that feel heterosexual to you? A feeling of pressure rose in me, but I stood there trying hard not to show I had a secret. So you work for an airline, Paul asked? Yes, but I also have a side job that I love. I choreograph Africa's Miss Universe pageant, Sev said. Paul burst out laughing. What's so funny? That's the gayest job I ever heard of. You really think you're not out? Paul said. Sev looked disappointed. Come on, Paul, I said, trying to soften the blow. Maybe in Africa that registers different. Sev interrupted us. Guys, I'm sorry, but this small talk is killing me. Can we just do this already? It was brash and kind of hot. Paul grabbed Sev and started kissing him. Kissed his forehead and then his mouth. I reached around Sev's waist from behind and unbuttoned his pants. His beige khakis fell to the floor. Underneath his hetero drag was who Sev aspired to be. Hot, pink, assless, Andrew Christensen briefs. This was underwear designed for sex parties and porn, exclusively worn by seasoned whores. Nice underwear, I said hesitantly. I wanted you to think I was cool, so I bought what the actors in the Cocky Boys videos wear. A silence fell. There wasn't anything really to say. Paul pushed Sev down to his knees. Sev unbuttoned our flies and put our dicks in his mouth. Paul eyed me suspiciously. I knew what he was thinking. Would a virgin really be this aggressive? Sev was a man possessed. I watched as he kept sucking us, his eyes glazed in excitement. Oh boy, licking his lips. He looked up at us with wide puppy dog eyes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you both so much. Sev was the definition of joy. He sucked good, actually. I wondered if he learned it from studying all the porn, or if his desire had been unleashed once it's found its form. Did he feel like himself now that he had two hard dicks in his mouth? As Sev sucked, I turned to Paul, my future fiancé. I kissed him. We had many threesomes, but with Sev, this felt different. Our sex took on a new dimension. Paul pulled Sev up and started kissing him. As I got on my knees, I tossed off Sev's cool underwear and buried my face between his perky ass cheeks. What did it mean for me to be the first person to rim him? I liked picturing him replaying this moment of my tongue entering his hole for years to come. Just then, Sev tensed up for a moment. After years of having sex with screens, the reality of two bodies probably overwhelmed him. Paul grabbed Sev by the back of his neck and led him to the bedroom. Sev paused. One question first. Why me? I don't have a muscular body like you guys do. He was already violating Paul's threesome rules. No emotions and no neediness. You really have no idea how hot you are, I said, as Paul dragged Sev onto our bed. Paul was not going to grovel. Paul leaned up against the headboard. As Sev inserted his face between Paul's hard thighs, welcoming his dick in his mouth, Sev spread his legs wide open in an upside-down V-shaped, with his hole fully on display, surrendering himself to my service. In the past, Paul had critiqued my technique as a top, saying I could be too violent, and he encouraged me to ease into it and to pace myself. He was right. I could be harsh. I tried to remember this as I opened up Sev's hairless ass cheeks and lined my cock up against his hole. He never once looked back to see if I was wearing a condom. I wasn't. Prep made me feel invincible. I entered Sev with confidence as he continued sucking Paul's dick. I pushed deeper inside, and Sev let out a whimper. His asshole resisted at first and then escaped, but then it returned, ready to go. I began again, fucking him slowly but forcefully, and then I couldn't help myself. I wanted him to really feel me. I started pounding into him harder and harder. Slow, slow, slow down, Paul instructed. I slowed. Sev moaned as I entered him again. He was one with our cocks inside his little body. I felt him tremble. I was a little sad that I couldn't see his face. I wanted to see what my dicking was doing to him. I leaned in low and whispered in his ear, "You were born for this." Positive reinforcement, I thought. I wanted to teach him that his desire was good, that it was natural. I wanted him to know that everything was going to work out. I wanted that too for me and Paul. I looked at Paul. He smiled at me happily. Even with my dick in someone else, I felt Paul's love so intensely it was making me blush. I wondered if Sev could feel it too. The power this moment had. We were a collective now. made from the fucking that had been passed down through the generations of men. It was warm and safe. I felt lucky and protective of it. Caught up in the rapture of love, I sang to myself as I fucked Sev's ass to the rhythm of Anita Baker's love song. I leaned in and gave Paul a deep kiss. As close as I closed the circle between the three of us, I felt feelings of bliss tingling all over me. I wanted to hold on to this forever. Then suddenly Sev broke it entirely. He struggled off my dick and jumped out of bed. Had I gone too far? Had I set something off in him that made him rediscover his shame? Sev ran to the bathroom and I turned to Paul. I told you you're too rough, he murmured. The sink in the bathroom ran on and off again. Sev poked his head out. 1 minute, guys, he said like a flight attendant. He said in flight attendant mode. He stepped back into the room, looking proud. He got on the bed, this time on his back. We were face to face. I wanted to see his eyes bulge as I entered him. I gave him poppers. From this day on, you're a proud slut, I proclaimed, envisioning myself as a priest blessing an altar boy at his communion. Paul laid on his side and watched us, looking a little confused. I never usually spoke during sex, but Sev's need for validation made me perform a version of myself that Paul had never seen. Poppers, dick, and hangover combined with the permission to be a true fag seemed to push Sev over the edge. Tears formed at the corner of his eyes. You're going to make so many men happy, I said, as I exploded inside of him. I kissed him and wiped his tears, dismounted and waved to Paul, who wasted no time in taking my place. The room felt ritualistic. We were shamans leading an inverse conversion ceremony, exercising his internalized homophobia by pumping our dicks in his hole. The true path was ass. It really was holy. Paul's cock was only in Sev for a few minutes before Sev ran to the bathroom again. I'm sorry, but you're hitting parts of me that have never been touched before. It feels like I have to urinate. The sex continued for an hour or so. We tried different things. Sev always the sub. The more we were dominant, the happier he seemed. Paul eventually came, mixing his load with mine. When the moment arrived for Sev to conclude this by coming, he couldn't. We tried everything, jerking him off, making out, pinching his nipples, eating his ass, biting his belly, licking his balls, sucking his toes. Nothing worked. I realized that throughout the whole encounter, Sev had only been semi-erect. I felt guilty ending without his release, but after some time it was getting awkward. I'm too tired, I just can't do it, Sev exclaimed. He was visibly frustrated. It's all the porn, Paul said. Guys that watch it excessively can never come with other people. From now on, stick to the real thing. Yes, sir, I promise, Sev complied. Paul and I laughed. How do you feel? I asked. This is the best day of my life. You two are my gay godfathers. I know he meant it as a compliment, but we weren't into it as we were not that much older than him. That's an excerpt of The Godfathers. Thank you. Thank you to Anita Baker.
Dedicated to Paul.
Dedicated to Paul Kopka. Mm-mm.